Somewhere in the mountains of Syria, a grandmother is scolding her grandkid for staying out too late. A farmer is arguing with his neighbor over whose turn it is to use the water. A priest is whispering a bedtime prayer over a sleeping child. Normal stuff, right? Except, every single word they're saying, Jesus Christ would have understood completely. Not because they're quoting scripture. Not because some linguist reconstructed it for a museum exhibit. Because this is just how they talk. This is how they fight, how they laugh, how they mourn, how they fall in love. In a language that the rest of the academic world has been calling dead for centuries. That language is Aramaic. And these people, they never got the memo. Most dead languages die completely. They end up in museums, in textbooks, in the mouths of academics who study them like fossils. Aramaic didn't. And the reason why starts with a mountain. The village is called Maaloula. And the moment you see it, carved directly into the face of a mountain, northeast of Damascus, you'll understand why it survived when everything around it didn't. This place doesn't just feel ancient. It is ancient. The cliffs didn't just give the people shelter. They gave them invisibility. They gave them time. For longer than most civilizations have existed of Roman boots, Arab armies, Ottoman flags, and most recently, one of the bloodiest civil wars of the 21st century. A village so old, it makes most countries look like startups. Maaloula survived all of it. But in 2013, it almost didn't. In 2013, a convoy of armed militants rolled into the mountains northeast of Damascus. They weren't there for the scenery. They wanted Maaloula, specifically, what it represented. A Christian village. An ancient one. Still standing. Still speaking. Still praying in a language that predated Islam, predated Christianity, predated almost everything they claimed to be fighting for. Within days, the village was overrun. Residents grabbed what they could and ran. Families who had lived in the same homes for generations, gone overnight. The ancient churches, some of the oldest on earth, were ransacked. Crosses torn down. Artifacts smashed. 12 nuns were taken hostage from the convent of St. Thecla. Other residents were given a choice that hasn't changed in 2,000 years, convert, or leave. Most left. The world barely noticed. The Syrian civil war was producing so much horror, so many headlines, that one ancient village losing everything registered as a footnote. A few news articles. A few statements from religious organizations. Then the news cycle moved on. But the people of Maaloula did not move on. They waited. They stayed in government-held areas, in the homes of strangers who took them in. Some had left with nothing but the clothes on their backs, and the language still in their mouths. Months passed. And when the militants were finally pushed out, they came back. Quietly. Without cameras. Without a press conference. They just came home. What they found when they got there was devastating. But what they brought back with them, nobody could have taken. Because you cannot loot a language. You cannot ransack a word. You cannot burn down a sound that lives inside a person. Maaloula was broken. But Aramaic was still breathing. Quick one, if this is the kind of content you want more of, hit like. And drop your country in the comments, genuinely want to know where this is reaching. Walk through Maaloula today and it hits you differently. The bullet holes are still in some of the walls. The churches have been partially restored, scaffolding where ancient frescoes used to be, fresh plaster covering wounds that go back centuries. The village looks like a place that survived something. Because it did. But then a kid runs past you, yelling something to his friend across the alley. And you realize, that's Aramaic. Just a kid. Being a kid. In the language of the Gospels. That's when it stops feeling like history and starts feeling like something else entirely. Maaloula has roughly 3,000 residents. Most of them are Greek Catholic or Greek Orthodox Christians, a community that has worshipped in the same mountain churches since before the religion had denominations. Their daily life is quieter now than it was before 2013. Some families never came back. Some houses are still empty. Maaloula sits at nearly 5,000 feet. The mountain climate means pomegranates, figs, apricots, fruit that grows slow and tastes like it earned it. Village women make a fermented apricot drink called a mardine that has been produced in these mountains for so long nobody can say exactly when it started. Flatbread baked in wood-fired ovens. Lamb slow cooked with herbs that grow wild on the cliffside. These are not recipes. They are memory systems. Every dish is a document. And the language wraps around all of it. When a mother calls her child in for dinner, that's Aramaic. When neighbors argue about politics over coffee, that's Aramaic. When the priest begins the liturgy on Sunday morning and the congregation responds without looking at a single page, that's Aramaic too. The village didn't survive because of governments. It didn't survive because of international organizations or UNESCO heritage designations or academic preservation programs. Those things exist. They help. But they are not why Aramaic is still alive in these mountains. Aramaic survived because mothers spoke it to their children before those children could understand anything else. Because grandmothers told stories in it that no written record contains. Because the language was never separated from life, never put in a box, never placed behind glass, never treated as something that needed saving. It was just spoken. Continuously. Without interruption. For 2,000 years. That is not a preservation strategy. That is something far more powerful than a preservation strategy. Now linguists will tell you that Maaloula's dialect, Western Neo-Aramaic, one of the last living descendants of the specific branch of Aramaic that Jesus spoke. Not a cousin. Not a distant relative. The last direct line. There are perhaps a few thousand people on earth who speak it natively. When those people are gone, and some of them are already very old, that line ends. Not the language entirely. But that specific, unbroken, 2,000-year thread connecting a mountain village in Syria to the word spoken in Galilee. That thread is fragile right now. The civil war scattered families. Young people leave for Damascus, for Beirut, for Europe. The village that held on through everything is now facing something that armies and occupations could never quite manage, the quiet pull of the modern world. But here is what stays with you. After everything, there are still children in Maaloula who will grow up and never think of Aramaic as ancient. Never think of it as rare. Never think of it as something worth preserving. To them it will just be the language their mother used when she called them in for dinner. And if that isn't the most quietly extraordinary thing you've heard all week, that video is right up there. And after everything you just watched, it will land completely differently.